Hello everybody, it's Foxy speaking, and today it's quite an important day and relatively, it's a day in someone's memory, believe it or not. Today is the birthday anniversary of the late Cliff Crozier, a former dedicated former head teacher of the Greasby primary schools in the Wirral in Cheshire, the Wirral region in Cheshire, a former decorated World War II veteran, and a highly known British English centenarian, Cliff Crozier, and today would have been his birthday. He's sadly no longer with us, I'm afraid. He's no longer with us now, and but he was quite interesting when he was alive, and what one could have found out from him. Born on this day, the 6th of September 1915, he's born in Birkenhead in the Wirral in Cheshire. Apart from both world wars, the Spanish flu pandemic, and the time he was at college, he'd lived there all of his life. And oh, sorry about that. And yes, and he was educated in Birkenhead, and when in college he became very, very ill with some unknown illness, and his father came to pick him up, and he did not want to go back home with his father. He wanted to stay at the college with his friends for a relatively short time, which was something he had always regretted all his life, as one could imagine. You know, that's the thing. It was because Cliff Crozier himself admired his late father very, very much indeed. And upon leaving college, after finishing his training to be a teacher, he filled in the position of working as a teacher, which he was able to do for a few years, but then World War II broke out. So at the start of World War II, he had to put his teaching aside and then had to sign up for the British Army fighting for services in World War II, which is what he did and continued with it until the war's demise the war's ending demise in 1945. And following the end of World War II and VE Day, despite its continuation in Japan, Crozier went back to teaching and filled in his teaching position. And then into the 1946, a year after after the war, he and his late Canadian wife, Renee, had one beautiful daughter, Carolyn. He only had just the one daughter, and that was it. He married his lovely wife, Renee, in 1940, who was originally from Montreal in Canada. Wonderful place, even though I've never been, but my mother's been to Montreal once before. And yes, he and his wife Renee had a daughter in 1946, Carolyn, and after he had his daughter and despite his continuation with his singular teaching position, he eventually, in the 1950s, ended up receiving a huge promotion to being a head teacher of Greasby Junior Schools. So he became the headmaster of Greasby Junior Schools in the 1950s, holding that position until his retirement in 1978. Although despite people, men and even women, back in the 1970s, had a rightful eligibility in receiving their bus passes and their full-on state pensions for retirement when they were 60. But he continued working. Cliff Crozier, he would not retire until he was nearly 63. So obviously the teaching position kept him going, as this circumstance, as all these circumstances of substantial evidence could probably show. If one continues working past retirement age, it can keep them going for quite a while, or even longer than expected. So he retired. So he retired in 1978, and following his retirement, he did want to take his wonderful late wife, to her hometown of Montreal. But sadly, even when they were able to fly, his wife sadly could not fly because of a terrible heart condition which prevented her from being able to fly abroad. And plus, with the pricey expenses of travel insurance, and with her bad heart condition atop of that, there was just no chance they would go. But sadly, during Cliff Crozier's retirement years, his wife, Renee, very sadly died in 1990 after almost 50 years of happy marriage. But following Renee's death in 1990, because it did, I think he was really hit hard, as anyone could imagine, because he was going on for 75 when Renee died, and really was quite hit hard when his wife died. So following Renee's death, Cliff Crozier in 1992, 2 years after her death, subsequently went to visit Montreal, her hometown, Montreal, Canada, and he continued to visit Montreal, going abroad despite age and travel insurance, pricey issues of travel insurance. He continued going abroad, visiting Montreal from 1992, from when he was in his late 70s until shortly before his 95th birthday in 2010. So really quite impressive. He would not stop. He didn't really stop going abroad until he was nearly 95. And 5 years after his last visit in Montreal in Canada, Cliff Crozier subsequently celebrated his 100th birthday, having a nice celebration, and the mayor of the Wirral region of Cheshire gave him a special honorary visit for his 100th birthday. And the month after his 100th birthday, in October of 2015, Cliff Crozier himself and his daughter Carolyn went to visit New York City in America, after having been more than 5 years since he went abroad. They stayed there for quite a reasonable amount of time before returning back home to England. Then in May of 2016, shortly before his 101st birthday, Cliff Crozier took a flight in a biplane, having not been in one since World War II. And the pilot who flew him in the biplane was just surprised at what he saw from Cliff Crozier himself, because he said many people in their 90s, war veterans in their 90s, needed to be helped in and out of the cockpits of the biplanes, but Cliff Crozier, at 100, nearly 101, he clambered in and out of the passenger seat without any help whatsoever. He clambered in and out unaided, and the pilot said that you would never believe he was 100. Well, you probably wouldn't if he was able to clamber in and out that easily and completely unaided. I mean, a man in his 80s would have very easily needed help, but he didn't at 100. So he, in a way, was the big exception. Then just before the winter of 2016, shortly after his 101st birthday, he was interviewed by life hunters and still showing no signs of slowing down despite his age. But then about the following year later, or before his 102nd, he was showing a few signs of slowing down, but not a large amount, but was still, before his 102nd birthday, he was considered to be living 101 years and was really not out. And sometime after his 102nd birthday, in November of 2017, a few months after his 102nd, he was present at the Moreton Christmas lights, switching the Christmas lights on. Although despite having slowed down a bit, he'd still took part in the ceremony. Then the following year later, in November 2018, he was made guest of honour visiting a secondary school honouring the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Armistice at the end of World War I. Then on the 6th of September 2019, Cliff Crozier celebrated his final 104th birthday. But very, very sadly, 6 months later, Cliff Crozier very sadly died on the 12th of March 2020, aged 104, going on for 105. He did extremely well. He was survived by his daughter and 2 grandsons, Rich and Christopher, and several great-grandchildren. He was a much-loved father and a very much-loved grandfather and great-grandfather, and was a very good former headmaster and good teacher. May the memories of Cliff Crozier, of his surviving friends and surviving family relatives, including his daughter, his 2 grandsons and his great-grandchildren, may their memories of Cliff Crozier sustain them largely if they're watching. I mean profoundly, may their memories sustain them absolutely profoundly, as he would have been a very big part of their lives to them, big time, not little time. And obviously, the loss of their much-loved relatives is obviously going to have a big knock-on effect on them, despite the fact he lived to such a great age. But, yes. But that's all I thought I'd give about Cliff Crozier. And I have also another friend, 2 friends of mine who have birthday on the 6th of September. And I remember a new friend, one of them is a new friend. Again, it's a female, and another one is a friend, also a friend of my mother's, as well as a friend of my own, whom I've known for really a long, long time. Very long time, I have to say. You know. Thanks all indeed for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. And before this video has ended, you might see something which may draw attention to some of you, or might be of some interest for one of you or 2 of you. Thanks for watching. Bye bye everybody. From Foxy, and in loving memory to the late Cliff Crozier.